It is heartbreaking videotape taken just before the church massacre that shocked the world. One by one, they arrive at Emmanuel AME Church in Charleston, South Carolina, preparing for a weekly Bible study class. You even see a little girl go inside. They couldn't know that just 30 minutes later, a rampage would erupt. They hug in the parking lot. They embrace at the door. One woman shows off a poster board to another parishioner. And this is chilling. You can see a black car pulling into a parking space. It's the killer, Dylann Roof, getting out of the car. He walks to the front door. He adjusts his sweatshirt. His gun is believed to be hidden underneath. CBS News correspondent Mark Strausman is covering the trial, where Dylann Roof's mother was so distraught at the testimony, she suffered a heart attack in court.
I saw the EMTs bringing a gurney into the courthouse to bring her out. She had apparently had a heart attack. Don't know how well she's doing, but like a lot of people, clearly had a strong emotional and, in her case, physical reaction.
This Snapchat video was also played in court, showing the parishioners inside the church. There's Roof, just sitting there waiting to open fire. And look at this, Roof leaving the church, the .45 caliber gun in his hand. He gets in his car and pulls away. For the families of the victims, reliving the nightmare in court has been an emotional experience.
Dylann Storm Roof was a blue-eyed, bow-haircut wearing boy that came from a broken home and attended at least 7 schools in 9 years. Mr. Roof attended racially integrated schools and did have black friends. He came from a respected family, and his grandfather was a well-respected lawyer. His divorced parents began to struggle with finances when in 2009 his mother was evicted from her home, and his father's business of renovating historic buildings fell into debt and closed soon thereafter. Roof dropped out of high school after grades forced him to do the 9th grade twice. An inability to find consistent work combined with an alcohol and drug problem might have led to his run-ins with the police. In the months before the massacre, he began to read white supremacist websites and spoke of wanting to start a race war. Many of his childhood acquaintances say that they didn't see any bigotry in him. Mr. Robinson Haywood said, "To me, in the 7th grade, he saw black just as he saw white. You know." Mr. Robinson Haywood currently works in a funeral home and helped prepare 2 of the bodies of the shooting victims for burial.
I went to that church in Charleston, and I did it.
Did what? I mean, I know stuff sometimes still to say.
It's not that I don't want to say it because I don't want to make myself seem guilty. I just don't really like saying it.
So did you shoot him?
Yes.
What kind of gun did you use?
A Glock 45.
Dylann Roof had a prior police record consisting of 2 arrests, both made in the months preceding the attack. On March 2, 2015, he was questioned about a February 28 incident in Columbia Centre in Columbia, in which he entered the mall wearing all-black clothing and asked employees unsettling questions. During the questioning, authorities found a bottle of what was later admitted to be Suboxone, a narcotic used either for treating opiate addictions or as a recreational drug. Roof was arrested for a misdemeanor charge of drug possession. He was subsequently banned from the Columbia Center for a year. After he was arrested again in April 26 for trespassing on the mall grounds, the ban was extended for 3 additional years.
Death. Dylann Roof has been sentenced to death in Charleston, South Carolina, the man behind the killing of 9 churchgoers at a predominantly black church in Charleston, South Carolina, and represented himself, acted as his own lawyer without calling any witnesses in his own defense. The only issue here was whether he'd be facing life imprisonment or death. It is death. Jonathan Serrie is on scene and can tell us more. Jonathan.
Neil, Dylann Roof looked down with his hands folded as the jury read its verdict. They agreed to all of the prosecution's allegations against him, that he willfully committed these murders, that he hated African Americans, that this was indeed a hate crime, and then they handed down their decision that Dylann Roof indeed should be sentenced to death. The jury had to come up with a unanimous verdict on the sentence in order for him to be sentenced to execution. Otherwise, the default sentence would have been life in prison without the possibility of release. Earlier today, Dylann Roof, acting as his own attorney, delivered his own closing argument. His closing argument lasted for only 5 minutes. He quietly asked the jury to give him a life sentence, and then rhetorically asked the jury, quote, "Wouldn't it be fair to say that the prosecution hates me because they're trying to give me the death penalty? Anyone who hates anything in their mind has a good reason for it, and sometimes that's because they've been misled, and sometimes it isn't. But I would say that in this case, the prosecution, along with anyone else who hates me, are the ones who have been misled." In his brief closing argument, Dylann Roof argued that he was not filled with hate, as the prosecution had alleged, but the lead prosecutor in this case, delivering a closing argument that lasted a little bit longer than 2 hours, argued that Roof remained unrepentant and reminded jurors that as recently as this very trial, he had attended some of the hearings, walking into the courtroom wearing shoes with handwritten racist symbols on them. Obviously, the jurors were persuaded by the prosecution's case and their closing argument, agreeing that Dylann Roof should pay the ultimate penalty for killing 9 members of Emmanuel AME Church back in 2015. Neil?
Jonathan, thank you very much. Jonathan Serrie, Fox News anchor.
Breaking now, the same jurors who convicted Dylann Roof of murder for killing 9 people in Charleston, South Carolina, are back in court today to decide whether he spends his life in prison or is put to death for his crime. Jonathan Serrie joins us live from the courthouse in Charleston, South Carolina. Jonathan?
Hi, Jenna. Well, since Dylann Roof is acting as his own attorney, many wanted to see what he was going to say in his opening statement. Was he going to reference the crime? Was he going to offer a justification? No. Instead, he simply explained to the jury quite calmly why he chose to represent himself. He said he made this decision to prevent his lawyers from introducing evidence about his mental health, and urged jurors to ignore anything his defense team may have said about this topic in the past. Roof concluded, quote, "There is nothing wrong with me psychologically," end quote. The prosecution reminded jurors of Roof's racist motives for the shooting at Emmanuel AME Church, which left 9 parishioners dead. Assistant U.S. Attorney Nathan Williams said any of the murders alone could warrant a death sentence, but, quote, "Taken together, they justify the most significant penalty available to you," end quote. Prosecutors are calling on family members of the victims now to describe the human toll the crime has taken. Before the hearing, Malcolm Graham, who lost his sister, Cynthia Hurd, in the shooting, shared his thoughts with us. Listen.
My sister and 8 others died simply because they were there and that they were black. And that cannot stand in a civilized society. And that has to be punished.
And prosecutors are expected to call on as many as 38 witnesses. Dylann Roof, on the other hand, says he will call no witnesses, offer no evidence, but he does plan to make a closing argument. Jenna?
Well, we'll watch for news from Charleston, South Carolina. Jonathan, thank you very much. Big story there.
Next for Dylann Roof, now that this jury has decided he should die, 7 News reporter Nikel Smith is joining us with what's possible. Nikel?
Well, Tom and Amy, I talked with a former upstate solicitor to get his expertise on a process he says still has a ways to go.
Yeah, I can't remember when we've had such a disastrous thing happen.
It's a day that shook South Carolina to its core. Now a jury says the man responsible for the Charleston church shooting deserves death himself.
Nobody likes to have a life taken, but in these circumstances, I think that was the justice was served.
Former 7th Circuit Solicitor Holman Gossett says Ruth can now ask for a new trial.
And he didn't have any attorneys helping him in the penalty phase, so he may make that motion that, after reflecting on it, that was not a wise choice.
Gossett says it'll be up to the judge to decide, after which the appeals process kicks in.
Then it'll go through the process of automatic hearings with appellate courts to see if there's any reason under the law that it should not stand on any legal grounds.
He says that could take years in a federal case where death verdicts are rare.
There have only been 3 sentences for death carried out since the reinstatement of the death penalty in 1988 in federal court.
Gossett says though a lengthy process lies ahead, this decision is a step towards justice for those directly affected who've exemplified their faith.
Tragedy happens, but we still don't lose our heart in Christianity and lash out in hate. They let it go through the legal process, and we've come to a just point at this stage.
Ruth is the first to get the death penalty for a federal hate crime case, according to the Associated Press. His formal sentencing tomorrow is set to start at 9:30 a.m. Tom, back to you.
A friend of Dylann Roof, named Joey Meek, had prior knowledge to the Charleston Church massacre, but decided to tell no one. He says Dylann boasted in a drunken moment about wanting to start a race war. Initially, he hid Dylann's gun, but put it back after a day had passed. Joey Meeks was sentenced to 27 months in federal prison. He was charged with a misprison felony, that's concealing and failing to report a crime and lying to the FBI. Court records show he pleaded guilty to these charges and faced up to 8 years in prison. In the indictments against Meeks, prosecutors alleged he told the FBI agent that he did not know the specifics of Dylann Roof's plan to shoot individuals on a Wednesday during Bible study at an AME church in South Carolina, Charleston. And Meeks neglected to notify authorities of what he knew.
It's a young samurai, I smoke a spliff in the cup, and I pass a lot to my bro. No fuck with my flow. Couple bad bitches and a cup of that Joe. So it's just THC.